everybody, it's Mr. Radigan again. So our next unit, you were just given our volume packet. So if you want to take a second to look through what we've got, the first page says volume of a cylinder, and that's going to be what we start with. We're going to talk about 3 different shapes. So you got a cylinder. Next, we're going to work on the cone. Third is going to be a sphere, and that is going to be the last shape we talk about in 8th grade. We're going to work with pi a lot, so get really familiar. You are going to need a packet. You are going to need markers or a pencil or something to work with. You're going to need a calculator because we are multiplying by pi. We're squaring things. We're multiplying, dividing, all that good stuff. So volume of a cylinder. A cylinder, you see a million cylinders every day. Think of any can, any pot, just about anything that has that circular up and down shape. So what we're going to try and teach today is how do you find the volume of a cylinder? And if you notice, we go in a couple steps. The first step is you need to start with the area of the base. And if you look at the base of this cylinder, it's actually a circle. So the entire bottom of a cylinder makes up that circle. And in order to find the area of just that circle that makes up the base, it is going to be pi times r squared. So that means if you were to find this, you would need the radius, and then you would square the radius, multiply it by pi. And these are all things that you have on your calculator. They're all things that we've done before. Second step, we're going to look up at this little watering can. So if you know the base of your cylinder, right? You find the base. Now that's just that area. To find volume, you need to multiply it by how high up this cylinder goes. That's how we're going to fill it up, okay, to find the volume. So once you know your base, you're going to fill up that cylinder by multiplying the base by the height. You're multiplying by the height, and we're also going to write that here because you're multiplying the base and then going all the way up, multiplying it by the height. So again, you're taking the base and then you're timesing it by the height. And we'll go ahead and write that. And so height will be written just as h to fill up that cylinder. When you find the base of something and you're squaring it, you have a unit squared. But as soon as you multiply it by something else, that's multiplying a third dimension. So instead of saying we're using square units, we're actually using cubic units. So if we were to say our base area is feet squared, the volume would have to be cubic feet, okay? So we're always going to say cubic units, and I'll actually put, it's going to be raised to the 3rd power. So now that we actually have some idea of what we're doing here, we're taking our base and we're multiplying it by our height. So our formula, our official formula for the cylinder is going to say volume equals the area of your base. So you need pi times r squared. And then multiplied times the height. So pi is just something on your calculator you can click, times your radius. So the radius is that distance from the center to the outside of the circle. Square that number, and then you're multiplying by your height of your cylinder. Over here, we just need to say, okay, what does this mean if you were to say it in a sentence? So the sentence that we're going to write is, the volume of a cylinder is equal to pi times the square of the radius times the height. So it is pi times the square of the radius times the height. So we have some examples here. Let's say that your radius of this can is 7.5 centimeters. And then they tell you that the height of the can is 11 centimeters. We are going to use our equation, our formula, and we are going to plug these numbers in. Go ahead and write your formula. So the one thing that we are always going to know is that pi is there. We can use pi. Our radius is 7.5, so we need to put 7.5 squared. And then you're going to multiply it by your height, 11. All right, so you can plug that all into your calculator. Pi times 7.5 squared times your height, which is 11. Just plugging it in exactly how it looks. And we get an answer of 1,943.80. Let's just round it up to 9. And again, that is cubic. Make sure that when you type in your answer or write down your answer, 1,943.9 centimeters cubed. Okay, our next example, it says D equals 12, and that means diameter. So diameter isn't just from the center out, that is the entire length across your base. And in order to get just the radius, we need to say diameter, and we're going to take the half of it. Half of the diameter is your radius, okay? So I can say half of the diameter is your radius. So anytime they give you the diameter, you have to divide that in half, okay? Let's go ahead and plug it into our equation, pi r squared times height. So if diameter is 12, then the radius is 6, which is half of 12. Go ahead, let's write down our equation. So pi times 6 squared times your height, which is 8. Go ahead and plug that in. Pi times your 6 squared times 8. And you are going to get 904.8 inches cubed. Now this last example, I'm going to make you do on your own. I'm going to create a cylinder, and then you are going to find its volume. Your diameter, keyword diameter, so that's not your radius yet, and your height is 5. You need to plug these values in. Notice this diameter might not be what you want to plug in. Figure out how to get down to the radius, and then plug these values into your equation and solve for the volume down here. Our next shape that we are talking about is the cone. All right, so you should have flipped your page after you finished that last example, and we're going to move on to the next shape, which is a cone. So step 1, it's pretty repetitive. You're going to start, again, with this base, this circle, and we are going to square the radius. And as always, your radius is that distance from the center out. We don't want that full length from the side to side. That's your whole diameter. Half of that from the center out is your radius. Take your radius that's squared, so r squared, right? We're multiplying it by pi again. Multiplying it by pi. And then you are multiplying by 1/3 of the height, okay? 1/3 of the height. Your height is just from the top to the bottom to the top. Whichever way you go, your height is that long side of the cone. You really only need your radius and your height, and then you have everything you need to plug this in. So the entire formula, the full formula, is going to be to the right over here. The full formula is volume equals pi times your radius squared. I'm going to have you multiply by the height. And then when we said to take 1/3, when you take 1/3 of something, you are dividing it by 3. I'm going to have you multiply everything together and then take that and divide it by 3. That, to me, would be the simplest way for you to remember to divide by 3. Because if you notice, this top section up here is the same as our formula for the cylinder. Pi r squared times height. Pi times r squared times height is the volume of a cylinder. To get down to a cone, you just divide that by 3. So a cone is really 1/3 the volume of a cylinder. And this is all about just plugging values in and finding the volume. If you have a calculator and if you can use all these little buttons here, you will be good to go. So example A, we have the radius 1.3 feet, height is 3, and so we are going to plug this into our volume equation. So pi times 1.3, your radius, 1.3 squared. Times your height, which is 3. And then once you get that all together, you're going to divide the entire thing by 3. You are going to hit pi times 1.3. You're going to square that, that's the radius squared, times 3, which was the height. And I'm going to have you hit enter. So that is the entire top that we wrote down. Once you get that number, that is if this were a cylinder. So to get down to a cone, which is what we're looking for, we're dividing that entire thing by 3. That was always the last step. And we'll get our volume, which is going to be 5.3. And that was feet cubed. Feet cubed. So let's go ahead and try the next one. We have a diameter of 4. And keyword here, diameter, that's not the radius. We have to take half of the diameter to find the radius. So our radius is actually going to be 2. If they give you the diameter, you need to work down to the radius. You need to take half. Now we can plug this in. Pi times radius, so 2 squared, times 9, our height. And then we have to divide the entire thing by 3. Let's plug that into our calculators. Remember to do the entire top first. Multiply pi times your 2 squared times 9. Hit enter. Divide by 3. And you get your answer. Go ahead and try that. All right, I got 37 rounded 0.7. I'm going to come up with your diameter and your height. Remember, I'm trying to trick you with that diameter. So with this diameter, keyword diameter, not radius, what do you have to do? And this height, find the volume of this cone. And finally, we have the volume of a sphere. You start by taking the 3rd power. So that's called cubing something. You need to take the cube. And again, you're taking the cube of the radius. That means you are taking your radius times your radius times your radius. So cubing something is multiplying it 3 times. Then you are going to multiply that radius cubed by pi. And then you are going to multiply it by 4/3. When we come up with this formula, in the end, volume always needs to be in cubic units. The final formula that we'll talk about is the volume of a sphere. So volume equals, and in order to incorporate this fraction 4/3, this is what I'm going to have you do. Okay, listen up. You are going to have, again, the top of the equation that you are all going to multiply together. So 4 times your pi times your radius cubed. And then to deal with this fraction over 3, I'm going to put it all over 3 again. That means you are going to multiply 4 times pi times your radius cubed, multiply all of that, and then divide by the 3. Let's see what that's actually going to look like, because that's some tough calculator work. I will show you exactly what I mean. I have things like soccer balls, disco balls, all kinds of sphere shapes, anything you can think of, the globe, and you need to find the volume. All you'll need is the radius. Everything else is given to you. So in A, they don't give you a radius, they give you the diameter. So in order to find the radius, we take 22, the diameter, divide it in half, and you're going to find that the radius is actually 11. We took half the diameter to find the radius. Now let's plug in our radius into our volume equation. So volume equals 4 times pi. All right. So we're going to still say 4 times pi times 11 cubed over 3. That will give us our volume. Now let's see what this looks like when we are going to put it into our calculators. 4 times pi times 11 times 11 times 11. 3 times, your radius should be multiplied 3 times. Hit enter. And our very last step for the sphere is to take that big, huge number that we got by multiplying everything on the top of our fraction and divide it by 3. That is just what our formula says. So we have 5,575 round up to 3. 5,575.3, and that is centimeters cubed. Centimeters cubed. All right, let's do one more before I give you your own. So your radius is 3.75 feet. Let's go ahead and plug that into our equation. So I'll remind you that all we're doing is we are plugging in our radius into our formula. Everything else is given to you. Everything else, all the other numbers to multiply are given to you. So let's put that into our calculator. We'll start with 4 times pi times your radius 3 times. 3.75 times 3.75 times 3.75. 3 times it's being multiplied. Hit enter. And then once you get that number on top, that's when you divide by 3. Hit enter again, and you'll get your actual volume, which is 220.9. I'm going to have you round up to 9. Equals 220.9 feet cubed. Do not forget your cubic units. centimeters cubed, feet cubed. And finally, for C, I will give you your radius, and you need to find the volume of that sphere. Plug your radius into this formula. Use your calculator and let me know, show your work, where do you plug it in, and then give me the volume. Okay, once you finish with the notes portion, now you are on to volume practice. And this incorporates some coloring and just practicing the basic formulas that we just learned. Now, you can work through each of these problems, and what you notice at the end, you'll get an answer, and you need to choose between the two answers that they provided. So, in number 1, you are either going to get the answer 9 centimeters, or you are going to get the answer 6 centimeters. If you answer 9, then for everything on the color sheet, you will find the number 1 and you would color everything orange. That's 1. For number 2, if you were to get 3 feet, you would color all the 2 slots. You would color all the 2 slots green. So everywhere you see 2, you would color green. You are going to have to do all of the math in order to figure out which answer is which. They're each pretty different, so don't be worried about rounding too much. So go ahead and do it the best you can. Work with a partner if you want, and get this done.